How's everyone doing? For those that don't know, my name is Rob. I'm a partner over at Volt Capital. We're an early pre-seed and seed stage crypto fund. We handle everything from applications and infrastructure. Some of the teams that will be speaking, not necessarily on this panel, but later today, we've invested in. And yeah, looking for anyone who reimagines systems. But yeah, I would love to take the time now to introduce the panelists, like go one by one, like really kind of dive into agents and how their infrastructure and what they're building really impacts the agent infrastructure side of things. So we'll start with Devansh.
Yep. Hey guys, is this working? Yeah.
Test.
Okay. Great. So I'm Devansh and I work at the EF on the AI and public goods side. It's not working. Okay. So my name is Devansh and I work at the EF on AI and public goods and governance, which kind of very broadly means how can we use AI to distribute money to different projects and different people. And we actually haven't seen too many use cases of AI being used to allocate capital. I think I'm working on deep funding, which is one of the projects that has an AI competition for people, and then we choose between the AIs based on which one is aligning with human preferences the best. We'll talk more, but yeah, basically this is the broad thrust. How can we use AI for product changes and approving them, and for distributing money to people and projects?
Hi, I'm Daryl. I'm a core contributor of Parry. We're a stealth mode crypto AI infrastructure company building the full stack comprehensive suite, starting from the wallets to the actual blockchain itself to the storage and TE private key security.
Yeah, thanks for having me. James from Eigen Labs, forward deployed engineer focused on bringing verifiability and security through the agentic stack.
Awesome. Yeah, so everyone says the agent stack is incomplete. Would love we could start with James, to name one primitive, whether it be code, spec, or hardware, that must exist for agents to go mainstream.
Yeah, I think more generally these systems just need more time in production. The founder of Perplexity summarized this very well. He said that he thinks by the end of the year the capabilities will be at where you could rely on an agent to book a holiday for you. I definitely agree. I don't think it's time for DeFi agents managing thousands to millions of dollars just yet. And on the actual AI research space, we're only now tackling actually training these agents, not chatbots, through reinforcement learning on long horizon tasks.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily a new primitive, but I think what's important for us to push the space for crypto as a whole is the evolution of the wallet, making the wallet more AI integrated natively. Right now, the wallet is a source where it holds your funds, but it can't do anything, really. There are, different types of manual logic they could apply to it. But assuming, of course, the permissions is set properly and you have the right security parameters, the potential of the wallet is really able to be evolved and utilized via AI.
Prediction markets have often had a liquidity problem that people aren't the markets aren't liquid enough to be efficient. And I think AI is something which is going to eventually solve that problem when AI starts taking part in prediction markets, but it's something we haven't seen come to fruition yet.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of the wallet side of things. Do you think ERC 4337 style is so basically account abstraction is something that can be leveraged going forward?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a value. The only concern I have with just that is it's Ethereum centric. So the benefit for agents is off the bat, they're multi-chain. They're not on a chain. Their brain is an LLM, probably via Open AI, Google, whatever. So by restricting them to pure Ethereum, I don't think that's really doing it justice. But I do think that there has to be some sort of interoperability across all chains. Our solution to do this is actually give an agent its own private key, keep that private key inside a TEE, make it such that the agent is the only one that can access the private key, but the private key has the accessibility to control assets on Solana, on Sui, on Ethereum, all EVM. But it's a different style. It's a little bit lower on the stack to help facilitate this. But if you're thinking just EVM, I do think there has to be some levels of standardization across the space.
Now, Devansh, thinking a little bit more about kind of the standardization, like working at the EF, are you communicating with a lot of these other foundations about like what does a broader standard look like? We have some of these agent infrastructure or frameworks like ELIZA and a few others. Like, is this things that you guys are looking towards, like, okay, we can leverage, or just creating a global standard that everyone kind of accepts going forward?
Yeah. So I think at the EF right now, like there's two sides at the EF which we work on. Like one side is how can we mobilize the community behind shared standards? And the other side is how can we actually get people to build AI for doing useful things? So I work more on the side of how we can get AI to do useful stuff in the world. And not just by building our own AI, like we don't build our own AI at the EF, but we create space for the community to build their own models. And as a result of that, like we kind of leverage the collective expertise of the community. But on the standards part, I'm not familiar with the work that's going on there. But like it is a year of interoperability. 2025 is the year of interop. So all of the standards will have to start talking to each other, and that's a big force which is happening at the EF right now and in Ethereum at large. How can we get all these standards to talk to each other?
A quick follow-up to that, and I'd like to expand it to the broader panel, is you said useful stuff. How do you define useful in the, I guess, like the light of agents?
So I think right now the wave of agents we've seen is being like the Twitter reply guy agents. And we kind of want to expand that to what we call like tasks which are verifiable. So asking an agent to predict, is this post on X of our caster, is it true or is it false? And then the agent gives a probability rating. And then if that post gets community noted later on, we know whether that agent was correct or whether it was wrong. And we can like give it rewards and other things. So that's one example of a useful agent, which is able to predict the truth or the veracity of a post. Another example is like predicting the Sibylness of a wallet. So is a wallet a Sybil wallet or a real wallet? And later on, if an agent predicts it for 100,000 wallets, we can have a human do analysis for 1,000 of them. And we can use the 1,000 to judge which agent is performing the best. And that best performing agent can do it for all 100,000. So that's kind of the idea which Vitalik wrote about in his blog post called humans as the steering, AI as the engine. So as humans, we can make good decisions, but we can only make a few decisions. AI can make a lot of decisions, but we don't know if they're good or not. So how can we actually get the best of both worlds is how we are looking at it.
Daryl, do you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I think, I guess the way I see it, how AI is used across more mainstream means is it's really effective for the create as well as the information gathering. I don't think we're seeing too many people use it for the operating yet. As in terms of like when you think of what do you use ChatGPT for, you're not asking it to book hotel or anything like that yet. So the movement toward there, that's actually more applicable to crypto. Where on crypto, there's a lot of operating. You're going to collect a reward, sell that, recompound that. It's the operating that isn't necessarily where the bounds are right now, or maybe that's where the bounds are. We want to break through that. So I think as we get more useful as a space, we'll see more AI used for operating, not just information gathering or creating an image or creating a white paper or creating a press release. But we do need a lot of things to break that barrier because it's not necessarily what people are used to, even in the Web 2 side of things.
Yeah, just expanding on that, I think I see agents really being very powerful in a general sense where there's potentially a task that involves many steps, is laborious, and can be delegated and broken down quite nicely into like composable units of tasks, each of which could be its own sub-agent doing that task. But just touching on the verifiability part that was mentioned, I think anything operational where the agent is making potential decisions for you, whether these decisions are low stake or high stake, still demand verifiability through them.
Yeah, that leads a little bit more to, like, once the agent holds your private key, nothing stops it from fat fingering. So that kind of touches upon the verifiability side of things. What on-chain programmable guardrails are you looking to kind of implement between the foundation level as well as like more broader infrastructure for everyone, as well as like more on the project level?
Yeah, I can take this one. Conveniently, Eigenlayer has an AVS called Ava Protocol that allows for event-driven actions where you can have a set of operators essentially sign off on off-chain signals. So 100%, like an agent fat fingering a private key and making it a transaction is not ideal. You can have Ava protocol essentially sign off on if the price of token X is below Y, if price of token Z is below Y, will execute said action. You can also integrate things like Telegram authentication from the user side that'll only execute said things after that. And I just want to touch on the private key management, because when agents start handling these, yes, you have T as an option, but not everyone's going to fall down that path. And I think there's new attack vectors that arise with agents managing private keys through things like jailbreaking and malicious prompt injection, where they can essentially surface this from their memory. So I think it's a really critical component of this, and we have another AVS tackling this problem specifically, called Silence Labs, that are using multi-party computation in like essentially splitting that private key across multiple operators to make that more robust.
Yeah, I think this is the core problem to ask in the space. Right now, we're at the space, the point in time where we want to know, will people even use agents to do their tasks? But then the next thing is, when they do use agents, how much money would they give the agent? Because if the agent's not trustworthy, maybe they'll put a couple hundred, a couple thousand, or whatnot. But would they really put enough that the agent's doing something useful for them? We have to break this problem down. So when thinking about the architecture for Parry, what we've done is, so firstly, starting with the agent itself has its own wallet. The user does not, the agent does not have access to users' funds. The users must transfer their funds to the agent, who the agent has its wallet in the TE. So it's in sole possession of that key. But there's a permission layer that's customizable. So you could, in effect, think of this agent as your own personal assistant that must read through the permissions that you've granted it. It's not. It's kind of unfortunate that we do need this layer, but I think it's for the protection and good of just usability. But this layer is equivalent to almost the approvals layer that you sign, like on MetaMask or something, where they'll ask, "Can you interact with this dApp?" You have to sign it today. I think that's still needed, because without that, the agent could be manipulated or could interact with something that looks useful, or get injected into moving to a different app and using that instead. So we still want this slow down so that the agent can now do this. And I think our vision that allows you to speed up over time is that eventually there's a rating system such that the agent can now go through different apps or different sub-agents that have reviews of positivity that they've worked in the past, handled thousands, millions of TVL, and then you can go more autonomous. But right now, I think we're just too early in the stage. We need this level of permission, so we've created a permission layer where the agent, your own personal agent, is going to have to check against before it operates.
Yeah, I think this is roughly where crypto is useful to AI. Like one of the ways I describe my work at the EF is that all the crypto people are into AI, but the AI people aren't even thinking about crypto. And how do we actually start making that happen? And like one of the ways is that like AI is inherently non-deterministic, that it's hard to figure out, like it'll give a different answer kind of every time you ask it, unless you have the same seed and the same server, but that's like very technical, going into the deep end, but like it gives a different answer every time. So it's non-deterministic. And crypto is very deterministic. You can like encode the laws and like it just has to follow those laws and it can't break out of it. So for something like the fat fingering, so there's a protocol called predicate, 0x predicate, where you can basically encode these rules saying that you have to do a test transaction before you actually send all of the money. And so if you encode that, then even the undeterministic AI will have to still follow those rules. And that's kind of where crypto AI could eventually intersect.
A lot of the stuff that the three of you were just discussing kind of goes down to like what model to use, as well as like the evaluations of the different outputs for more long tail actions. How are the three of you kind of thinking through these different benchmarks, and how is that being recycled and growing into like the infrastructure that you're providing for these teams?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I think model usage with agents, it's going to be unrealistic to use these huge models. Tokens aren't cheap, reasoning isn't cheap. So I think using smaller models that are specially fine-tuned for the task of your agent is probably a good avenue to look down. But I just wanted to underscore the importance of evals and benchmarks. They're absolutely everything. But unfortunately, we've seen that Web 2 providers aren't the most faithful and truthful with benchmarks matching the actual capabilities of the models. So there's efforts from an AVS called Layer Lens at the moment that are trying to tackle verifiable benchmarking. I think that's critical. But as for specific benchmarks that I could name off the top of my head for a specific use case, I don't think I've got that, sorry.
Yeah, I think the model side, it's something that we're not touching directly ourselves. We believe that whatever in the space and the best models will play out, as well as people could bring their own specific models for their use cases. But what we do with the model is we put in a specific architecture that works within Parry. So maybe like to color what the product looks like, it's a browser extension that's able to move your navigator, your actual web page, to whatever page you ask it to go to or whatever desire you're choosing. That task is broken down by sub-workers, first with a navigator that could break it down into, okay, let me pull the Twitter expert, let me pull the GMGN expert or the pump.fun expert, and then it reallocates it to those specific sub-agents. But with respect to the model, we actually think you can use any model for some of these basic things as long as you break down the task to be simple enough such that you're not overcomplicating what an individual agent is doing alone. If you allow it to delegate properly, then you can, a lot of these models are overpowered and can definitely do that well. You just want something that's more specific, that's able to execute its subtask properly, and you have operator really delegate the task and split it down and also validate it to see if it's indeed correct. But it makes it so you're not putting too much responsibility in just having such a powerful model, because we may not get there. I just personally think that we won't get there in Web3. I think it'll be the best models of Web2 that will be used in Web3. So we just want to make the space that people could bring their BYO model.
Yeah, how many of you have heard of Kaggle? Kaggle? Okay, maybe like maybe 20% of the room. Yeah. So it's a data science platform where you have something called ground truth data, which is kind of very exact, and then you have a competition for AI to predict what the ground truth data is. So the ground truth data might be all of our names, and the AI has to predict what our names are. And based on how close they are, they can basically get like a score. We can say that your AI is like the top because it's predicted all the names of the panelists accurately. So that's the kind of infrastructure that we are working on right now, like which we are collaborating with. It's a platform called Pond. CryptoPond.xyz is like the one that we are using to host our competitions at the EF, where basically we have ground truth data from jurors who are predicting things like, is Nethermind more important or is Go Ethereum more important? And we have AI models submitted by the community to actually give a score to all of these different core repositories. And we see which one is aligning with the juror ground truth data better. And that AI is then selected as the winner AI, which can distribute money to all of these different repositories. So that's kind of one example of the infrastructure that we are working on, like a Web3 version of Kaggle, where like in Kaggle, you have to upload a CSV file, but in like the Web3 version, like people just upload a model and you can query the model with new data as and when you want. So a lot of upgrades here in like improving what's there in the Web2 world for our purposes.
Now, to shift gears a little bit, MCP models call tools, but there's no shared memory or feedback. What is like the first real like teammate protocol we need, and how do you incentivize the adoption for it? I feel like this is a good one for James.
Yeah, so MCP doesn't provide memory, but that's a means for your agent to interact with the environment through like a standardized, API framework, right? But if you look at the true agentic stack, I believe there is memory. Like, for example, when we use chatbots today on ChatGPT, it remembers how you like response formatted and stuff like that. So the short answer is, I think like the memory providers hasn't been solved yet. That memory layer is still like getting itself worked out. But short-term memory would be things like, what are the API responses that are going into this like agent loop that actually fulfill this goal? Like the agent needs to process them and then plan based downstream of those results. So that's short-term memory. Long-term memory could be, for example, if you've got like a customer service agent and like you're sending us report requests, the long-term memory could be previous support requests that could be related to that, for example. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, memory is a key component to make accuracy or relevance for what the agent does. Otherwise, you start over all the time. In our architecture, we allow the user to save things into the core memory. So it makes it so your agent will now refer to the core memory first before processing and doing whatever, so there's context that's not lost. But that still doesn't help for the MCP side to make it a better MCP of a tool. I think what's needed for the economic system is just an open market. So ratings of which MCPs are good, which ones are poorly structured, which ones are unreliable, and then payments. So a user can choose, would I use a cheaper MCP tool that is unproven, or pay a little bit and use one that has a high rating and maybe you've seen millions of TVL go through. And so in that case, it's just an open market, more like an app store. That's kind of what we want to build over time, but we think first we need the existing MCPs to go into the network, and then afterward, it's just an open market. The best ones will become the reliable ones. We've seen that across crypto and different types of markets. And then people might diversify sometimes, and maybe they do this MCP 5 out of 10 times, this one 2 out of 10 times, and this one 3 out of 10 times.
So I think overall we can divide like the blockchain utility into two. One is as a decentralized database, and the other is as a container for financial value. And I think we've seen more product market fit for blockchain as a container of financial value than as a database. And I think like when it comes to long-term memory, we actually have an opportunity for that first use case where like to give one example of vector embeddings, it's a way to create long-term memory for an AI, that you have a library with a lot of data and it has accurate labels. So if I ask an AI, hey, tell me something related to evaluating impact on water, it would search the entire database and it would use the vector embeddings of like water to only pull that into its short-term memory. And then it would give you like a more accurate response. So I think this is where we might see some decentralized databases actually start make sense for actually doing vector embedding at like a larger level.
Yeah, just touching on that, I think the use case of blockchain as a database and store is very much going to become more prevalent with AI coming through. And Eigen DA would be a great solution for short-term memory, potentially long-term memory as well.
Daryl, you touched upon payments briefly. So just a quick show of hands. Does anyone know what like X402 is from Coinbase? All right, we got like 3. Yeah, so X402 lets agent pay for APIs with like a post request. So if payments, authentication, settlement become dropping commodities, which Coinbase is kind of going after, like where do you believe the moat is for all these teams kind of building in the space for agents? You can go, Daryl.
Yeah. I actually think this is the open the floodgates. Like it's ideal if the agents can make payments in touched Web 2. So the moat isn't the infrastructure level itself, just to make this happen. I think that's just, we wish it were already possible. Now, when it becomes possible, then you can really have your agent do things across the board using stables as their mechanism of transmission. And I think that's bigger than just crypto agents. It's actually crypto as a whole. But I think it very much powers what agents can do, because now agents can book a hotel, they can do X, Y, and Z via the assets that you have on chain. Swap them using DEXs because maybe they don't have stables and they have some other form. It really connects all the dots together. And I think that's something that we're waiting for. That was something when we were thinking about how to develop Parry, we actually thought that this is very important. But the issue is sometimes at Coinbase things take a little bit longer, or even for general adoption, they have to bring in the other side of the house that accepts the stables. So what we've developed it's called the commerce oracles. Similar to an oracle which relays data, this would be relaying the transaction itself. There's competition of who's going to actually trigger the Web 2 transaction. There's stables in escrow. And after the transaction is triggered, the results of the transaction are given back to the initial proposer, the escrow is released, and then the party, the agent, actually got its job done of whatever it is in Web 2 that it wanted. It's a way of doing it natively, but I think having this standard hit all of things and being pushed by Coinbase would be great.
Yep, I can go next. I think like I mentioned earlier, like this is the year of interoperability, and AI has a pretty big role to play in interoperability if we can fix the non-determinism problem that like AI could do something completely random. Rather than me having to bridge via 100 chains, or like 100 dexes and all of that. If I can just tell an AI and it goes and does the bridging for me, it would be a pretty neat solution to interop, not just between the Web3 world, but I think more importantly, and James can probably talk about this with the Web2 world as well, that how can we, if I give approval on like a travel platform, like that automatically gets deducted from my wallet and other things, and it's like trustless even in the Web2 world. So I think that's where I'm excited about AIS payments, like with interoperability with Web2 and between Web3.
Yeah, I think just touching on that, it's just highlights the need for verifiability, especially if there's any form of value transfer, like understanding and having a transparent view through that flow is incredibly important. And also a big thing I think blockchain can provide, especially through something like crypto economic security, is accountability for the actions of these agents, and making sure from a game theoretic perspective, they're going to adhere to the goal, the end goal, which is servicing the user properly.
I think we got a couple more minutes, but it's never been cheaper to fork an LLM, spin up infra on demand, and raise money. Give us the single hardest thing that your protocol or infrastructure has to replicate, whether it be technical, economic, or community, that will keep your company alive over the next 3 years. And really, like, tell us, like, how is that going to continue to compound over the next 10 years? And we can start with James.
Yeah, sure. So I love the quote from Shriram, which is that crypto has an apps problem, AI has a trust problem, and we want to solve that AI trust problem. And we're thinking that, and in my opinion, AI needs trust before the wave of apps comes through. So if we can solve that particular part of the equation, we should see a massive increase in the applications being built that are using verifiable, services, essentially. And I think that will be a very strong moat, forming a very, very strong application ecosystem on top of EigenLayer or EigenCloud now.
Yeah, I think this question is very relevant because we're so early and still in stealth. But it's caused us to actually have to build a stack from the ground up natively because some of these components don't exist today, or they're very immature, or they're not connected in the way we want them to be connected. So I think the moat over time is what right now we see as a burden, which is that we have to rebuild these components of like a wallet or of an Oracle or all of these things that are foundational. But over time, then it's almost like the Apple Play. You now have everything within your own ecosystem, unlike the Android Play. But in the Apple Play, it's in your own ecosystem. It works exactly as intended. You have control to tweak it as you need to, and then the experience is a lot more seamless. So we think that is, unfortunately, the strategy that we have to roll out, given the immaturity of the space. But over time, that'll actually be the benefit.
Yeah, so there's a very funny quote which Vitalik had said, which was that the age of apps is over, the age of AI linked to spreadsheets is like coming. So I think the moat is basically the spreadsheet in that sense, which the AI is able to leverage and actually like create interfaces and allow you to interact with it and all of it.
By 2028, what percentage of today's dApp front ends will be replaced by agent-to-agent interactions?
I think we can try looking at what already is being replaced with agents to get an indication of what's coming up next. And if I had to say what is AI already replacing in terms of front ends, I'm actually not coming up with a lot of things that it's already started replacing in terms of our user flow. Probably Google search. I think a lot of us have reduced our Google search in terms of a front end, and we ask an app. Like restaurants, like now if I want to know somewhere nice to eat in Cannes, I just ask an AI. I don't necessarily Google search. So I guess like what other front ends would it start replacing? I think Google search has been a window into the web for like in forever. So just replacing Google search now provides a new entry. So I guess like from AI just being a knowledge provider to you that, hey, this is the restaurant that are there in Cannes, it can actually even take actions on your behalf, like making a reservation or something. So I think that's what we're going to start seeing now, from AI just replacing Google search and giving you information to AI actually taking actions for you and replacing all of the apps like reservation, like apps for restaurants or anything else which you actually take an action with.
Yeah, I think in crypto, it was interesting when we were thinking about like what it should look like, because if you think about within a chat window, like a ChatGPT style, the majority of how people see AI, you miss a lot of context because you can't see what it actually looks like in the source. And for crypto, you don't trust it unless it's really the source. So I don't see AI really replacing the front ends. I think it's augmenting it. It allows you to see it, but also have like a highlighted section of, oh, you want the highest yields of this type of asset, just highlight the yields. And that's why we chose explicitly to use a browser extension, not like a MetaMask where it's a disappearing button that you click, but actually a side panel. So it's just there with you as you're navigating crypto. And that's because I think a lot of what people, especially crypto people, want to see is that they can do it themselves. They can trust it because they're the ones who've done it. They can see it from the source. It's not like a mislabeled API or something, and then they make a swap because it's all permanent. But instead, it's just a guide that's there with you as you navigate crypto as it is today that could help you decipher what does Pendle even mean when you're on that page.
And I'll just quickly add that it also helps us solve the problem of malicious front ends, which we saw with Gnosis can be a pretty big issue. So hopefully with AI, we can use the backend directly and we eliminate the risk of a malicious front end.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think front ends always need to exist for the sake of just a user interface and visibility, but bit of echo. But maybe where AI could start replacing these things, and touching on the previous point there, is like where a user flow would often involve navigating multiple front ends, or aggregating information from a front end and feeding that into the other. That's a perfect target for an agentic workflow, and that's where I see a lot of disruption. And we're already seeing it now with Claude's research agent. Instead of you having to go through Google Scholar, click on a link, look at the references there, click on another link, post that through Wikipedia, whatever, yada yada yada. I think automating those multi-step flows and collapsing all of that into a single, intent-based request to an LLM or agent would be my candidate.
Yeah, and one other quick point, like a lot of people ask me in Web 2, why should I build on Web 3? People who are developers, and my usual response is that in Web 3, you can separate out the front end and the back end. You can have one back end and multiple front ends from that back end, which you can't really do in Web 2. So maybe with like AI, we can actually start kind of having more of a focus on the back end so that many AIs are able to leverage it for their front end.
Well, thank you, everyone, and a big round of applause for the panelists.